Last time we tested 10 VR games with my Dreamer on the old RTX 2080 laptop, and the results were pretty impressive. And some of you have been asking me to compare it with the slam-tracked version of Dreamer. And that is the plan for today. I'll do some new benchmarks not only with my ancient laptop, but also on my RTX 4090 desktop PC, and yes, including some simulators this time. The reason why I'm doing this video is because of the well-known factor. Pimax inside-out SLAM tracking is reportedly more CPU demanding than Lighthouse tracking. The headset and the controller tracking is processed on the PC side with our own SLAM algorithms in the runtime, and while the tracking itself keeps getting improved for every update, the CPU utilization is still not as low as when running SteamVR Lighthouse-based tracking. And what I'm about to investigate is how the higher CPU utilization affects overall VR game performance. In other words, will you get the same performance or frame rate if you run Dreamer slam-tracked version versus the Lighthouse tracked version, or will your frame rates suffer? Spoiler alert, it's a mix of both, but it depends on multiple factors. But let's save my conclusion for the end of this video, and we'll start quickly by jumping right into the benchmarks. I promise to keep it shorter this time. Let's begin with my desktop PC. It's equipped with an RTX 4090 and an AMD Ryzen 5950X CPU. It was a pretty powerful PC maybe 5 years ago when released, but today it's far from what the best CPUs can deliver, and I bet most of you out there have a better CPU by now. Starting off with Half-Life Alyx, which doesn't really need much of CPU, I see no noticeable difference in performance between SLAM and Lighthouse tracking. I'm running highest fidelity mode in the settings, dynamic resolution disabled, and MSAA at 2x. Occasional GPU dips happen in both tests, but the game runs great and there is not much to add here. After this run, I asked Gemini about the most CPU-intensive VR games and picked 3 from that list. Obviously, Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 is one of them, or actually is the main one, a real CPU hog. On my desktop PC, the CPU and RAM memory are the obvious bottlenecks. I'm running medium to high in-game settings at native Dreamer resolution with foveated rendering enabled. Flying above Manhattan in New York is also one of the more CPU-demanding sceneries. In both the case of SLAM and Lighthouse tracking, the frame rate hovers between 45 and 50 frames per second on average. The CPU utilization is indeed a bit higher with SLAM, which you can see on the bottom left side in Process Lasso tool. The Pi server, which is one of the runtimes that's processing tracking, is running at 5 or 6% higher CPU utilization, but the frame rate is not noticeably affected. It may be that the average frame rate is 1 or 2 frames per second less when using SLAM, and there might be other scenarios in the simulator that gets more affected, but between these two tests, I wouldn't say it's a noticeable difference at all. And bear in mind, I'm running a more than 5-year-old CPU. DCS World is another example, many times bottlenecked by the CPU. Running the pushback mission with the A10 Warthog, my CPU prevents me from reaching 90 frames per second in both tests, at least if I do 150% of native resolution in the fovea area or the center area in the quad views by using Quad Views Companion. SLAM tracking, which is CPU dependent, should in theory here tank the frame rate more than the Lighthouse tracking. But I don't really see much of a difference, and both tests show a very similar frame rate. I also tried free flights in Persian Gulf and Nevada with the similar results. I was actually expecting higher difference in frame rate between SLAM and Lighthouse tracking, and yes, I put down the headset on the table in this test because I'm just lazy. But it doesn't seem to matter here actually. If I move the headset around, the frame rate isn't really affected and the CPU utilization do not increase. Then I did ACC, or Assetto Corsa Competizione, which is a way more demanding racing sim than the original Assetto Corsa. And according to Gemini AI, it is a top 10 CPU demanding VR game. Well, with the Dreamer running at native resolution, latest DLSS 4.5 and some minor adjustments in-game, I can't really reach 90 frames per second while keeping the fidelity up. Here the GPU is the bottleneck. The frame rate jumps a lot, all between 70 and 80 frames per second. Sometimes below and sometimes above, all depending on how many opponents we have in front of us. The higher CPU utilization with SLAM between 6 and 8% more doesn't really matter here. Frame rate is very similar in both tests. Of course, I could play around with the settings to reach 90 frames per second, but I wanted to keep as much resolution and clarity as possible while still keeping it playable. All in all, none of these 4 tests with my RTX 4090 and the Ryzen 5950X CPU revealed any significant difference in frame rate running with the SLAM-tracked version of Dreamer. In fact, I saw almost no difference at all. But what if I use a low-end PC and do a similar test? Well, here's where my poor old RTX 2080 laptop gets relevant again. You saw me running 10 different VR games last time on this laptop. All of these 10 games were playable. Some of them running at even stable 90 frames per second, at least when using 70% of native Dreamer resolution to compensate a little for the very old GPU, of course. Now let's try 5 of these games again with SLAM-tracked Dreamer. Starting with Beat Saber, I saw barely any difference in frame rate. Still locked at 90 most of the time, with some occasional CPU frame time jumps causing a stutter, but other than that, basically flawless performance and flawless tracking, despite an obviously higher CPU utilization with SLAM tracking. But then after this, things went downhill from here. Lucky's Tale frame rate was running fine, but only when one SLAM controller was enabled. But with 2 controllers active, the tracking completely froze and game became unplayable. As soon as 2 controllers were active, CPU utilization increased and the frame dips occurred. The controller tracking barely worked anymore at all. Turning one of the controller off brought the second controller to life and tracking worked great again. It seems like SLAM tracking is more CPU demanding when controllers are in use, especially 2 of them. Same thing happened in the game Moss, completely unplayable with SLAM-tracked VR controllers. Only 1 active made it somehow playable, but obviously for this game you need 2 controllers and you cannot use a gamepad. Interestingly, frame rate was basically at the same level as last time I tried with the Lighthouse tracked Dreamer, around 60 frames per second. But on this ancient laptop, the CPU can simply not keep up processing the controller tracking data. And the same story continues in Half-Life Alyx, which last time was very playable on this laptop with Dreamer and Lighthouse tracking. The funny part is that it's still running the same frame rate now, but the controller tracking itself just cannot keep up, and as soon as 2 controllers are active, hands just froze for longer periods of time and terribly stutter occurs when they start to move again. This made me realize that it's not about the SLAM headset tracking or head tracking. It's the SLAM tracked controller tracking that simply needs a faster CPU. With Beat Saber it was all fine, probably because the extreme low CPU utilization this game needs. To prove it to myself, I ran Assetto Corsa as the 5th and the last test on this laptop. And well, I literally saw no difference whatsoever from my benchmark last time. SLAM tracking gives me more or less the same frame rate as with the Lighthouse tracked Dreamer I tried in my previous video. Mostly around 80 frames per second on average, sometimes 70 or below, and sometimes even hitting 90 frames per second, especially with no opponents in front of me. And no wonder, here we're using only headset SLAM tracking with no controllers connected. So what did we learn from this? First, if you have a PC with a decent CPU and GPU from, let's say, the past few years, then you shouldn't notice the higher CPU utilization with SLAM. You will get the same frame rate, same performance and the same VR experience basically no matter what you play. Now, if you have a high-end PC VR rig, in today's standard at least, with DDR5 memory and one of AMD or Intel's latest CPUs paired with a proper GPU, then you have nothing to worry about going for the SLAM-tracked Dreamer version. But if you sit on a very old CPU, maybe also an outdated GPU, something maybe like my laptop here, or preferably a little bit better at least, then you will highly benefit from the Lighthouse version of Dreamer. I'm not saying go for the Dreamer if you are on an RTX 3070 or something. The Dreamer deserves, in my opinion at least, it deserves a native resolution, and that will require at least an RTX 4080 or better in many cases. But with a Lighthouse tracked Dreamer, you will at least make most games playable on a mid-range PC, maybe by lowering the resolution a little bit and without the CPU killing your controller tracking. Lastly, if you for some reason really need to pair an old PC with the SLAM-tracked version of Dreamer, then preferably stick to VR games that do not require the VR motion controllers. I hope you found this video helpful, and I hope it's answering some of your questions. Please let me know what you think in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.